we're back. We're back. I got a thumbs up. We're back. So, back, Minnie, Son of Monsterpalooza. We're done with Monster Party right now. Larry Stroth just sucked all the air out of the room, and now we get to breathe again. But we're doing masks for this one. That's fine. I'm here with Jasper Anderson.
Hi.
And we're going to be super safe with this one. So, it's cool, and that's fine. Whatever my guests want to do is perfect. Jasper, welcome.
Thank you.
To Minnie, Son of Monsterpalooza. To the convention center, as I've been saying.
Yeah.
We got all the cosplayers walking by. It's just
man, it was so hard getting up to the booth.
Knock you over. So how you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Jasper and I met Jasper at Legacy Effects, and I don't know how much you and I worked together. Did we work on projects together?
We did. I remember we did the walk-around Sasquatch suits.
Yes. And then we made a lot more of those. We made a lot of walk-around Sasquatch suits.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. They still are. I think they're still making more.
Wow.
It's crazy how, Jax Link's Sasquatch. So how long were you at Legacy?
About 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And you were downstairs. You were kind of like, so what was your background there? What were you?
So how far back do you want to go?
Well, let's start with Legacy, because that's
Okay.
where I knew you from.
So I started at Legacy. My first thing at Legacy was painting background masks on Suicide Squad. It was all those million-eyed guys.
Right.
And I had met Bruce Fuller previously.
Okay.
And he called me up and said, "Hey, they need more people over here for all these millions of eyeballs. Do you want to come in?" And so I started on that, and then they said, "Hey, do you want to stick around? We're doing Apocalypse," and I ended up working with Patrick Garrity.
Okay.
And he was really great because he kind of saw that I wanted to be there.
Right.
And so he was like, "Let me just kind of show you how the shop works."
Right.
And kind of made a point of here's the mech stuff, and here's, if you need this, ask this person.
Right.
And then sort of through him, then I kind of ended up doing a little bit of fabrication stuff, and then ended up back downstairs and got to sculpt once or twice.
Right.
And so I kind of say I was like a general purpose artist.
Right.
But still am in special effects.
So, I mean, that's what we've talked about a lot in the last few days, is like kind of being a jack of all trades. I know you're a sculptor. You're a fine artist. So I see all this stuff that you're doing on Instagram, and it's like, I want one. But, so, I mean, how long, where were you at before Legacy?
Legacy was my first actual shop. I had done, I had actually, before that, I had helped Kazu a little bit on his giant Lincoln head.
Okay.
I got to punch some hair on that. And I had also worked with a guy named Rallis Khan, who he was coming up with his own Halloween mask line.
All right.
And so I was basically producing those for him.
Now, were you casting those or sculpting? Or?
I was doing, I think they were all sculpted at that point. So I was doing the duplicate molds and casting them and painting them. And so, which ended up being a great education just on repeating.
Right.
Which ends up being so much
Kind
of
of turns
what
into
we do.
assembly line. How do you make this quicker and faster? And
Yeah. It's kind of I've always just been sort of doing miscellaneous stuff, kind of whatever, which is sort of what I like.
Right.
I like, and I think it's important, even if you're just doing one part, you have to know what everybody else is doing to be able to do your job.
Right.
So that you're setting up the next person to, not be in trouble, hopefully.
You got to do your job so they can do their job.
Yeah.
And, and that keeps skipping down the line. Yeah. Absolutely. So, was this a passion of yours ever since you were a kid? I mean, did you grow up just going, monsters, creatures, I want to work at Legacy or K&B or...
Kind of, sort of. It was sort of two things going on at the same time. I was really into film. And my mom showed me like all the classic films, Hitchcock and Wizard of Oz and Frankenstein.
Right.
And I kind of, so on the one hand, I was like, I knew I wanted to work in film, but then at the same time, I had always been making stuff as a kid.
Right.
And like, like colored construction paper and Scotch tape was like my first thing. And then my dad was really creative, and so he had tools and stuff, and so it was kind of like I could always just kind of try stuff.
Right.
And eventually, I think where it really kind of filtered into special effects is I got into Halloween.
Right.
And so I started like really in
the holiday, not the film.
Yes.
Okay. Or both.
Not really. I don't really do horror movies.
Yeah.
But I, like really in high school, I started doing like a big Halloween display in the front yard. And
I know nothing of that.
And so, and that's where I started like sculpting and painting characters.
Right.
Because it was like, oh, I want like a cool like gravedigger guy, and so and so eventually I got to a point where I was doing some animatronic kind of stuff, like real simple. But I had done like a skull that moved and talked, and I go, oh, I really want it to be like a Frankenstein monster face that's doing the talking. And I had done some research, and so I got from the library the Lee Bagan 3-dimensional makeup book.
Yep.
Because I was like,
it's up on the shelf somewhere.
That teaches you how to do foam latex and molds. And I was like, I think that if I can do the sculpture over the skull and cast it into foam latex, that I can get the mechanical thing. And then because I did it, but then because that was a makeup book, then I had all this other information.
Right. How to lay crepe hair, how to do highlights and shadows.
Yeah. And the other one, I always used to check out the Dick Smith monster makeup book from the library.
That's
the
Bible.
Keep it, renew it as many times as I could, and take it back and check it out later.
That's what I talked about yesterday. Did you ever get the Making a Monster? Al Taylor and Sue Roy were the writers on that.
No.
And it starts with like makeup artist Cecil Holland.
Is that the one with Planet of the Apes on the cover?
Yes, it has Dr. Zaius on the cover, and my cover is gone because there were so many readings and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But we had it at a public library, and I would get it, check it out, bring it back too many months later, pay the fine, and drop it in the slot, and then I would ask him to check it out again for me. And it got to a point where they said, it was just my name.
Yeah.
He checked out on it every time. They was like, you can't check this out anymore. We have to, it was like 30 days. They said, this has to be in the library for 30 days. Because other people, you've had this for a year. You've had this for a year and a half or whatever like that. And I was like so distraught that I would be without that book for 30 days. Yeah. And I remember going back and checking. It's still on the shelf. And I would look at it in the library. I'd just sit there and thumb through it, and I'd put it back on the shelf. Because
nobody else is checking these
if I
books
had
out
an
anyway.
iPhone, no, it's in the central Wisconsin. It's like at the library, nobody's checking out. How did they even get that book to begin with?
Right.
If I had an iPhone, I'd be taking a picture of every page or whatever like that. So I would go check it out every other day just to look through it. I'd put it back on the shelf like I'm supposed to. And then I would wait that 30 days, and I came back, and it's like, no, you've checked it. I said, no, it's 30 days. You said 30 days, and I can have it again. And they stamped it. I took it. My aunt finally found it in a used bookstore.
Oh, wow.
Like that, or it was like a bargain, the bargain bin or whatever like that. So that's the one I have now, is the bargain bin one.
That's great.
I should go back to the public library in Wisconsin, see if they still have them.
I wonder.
If anything, I'll take the cover off it. My cover is so long gone. It was so feathered and terrible. So so you were doing Halloween.
And actually that's why I brought this one, because this is not one of my old ones, but it kind of I brought it because it's the way I used to make stuff out of the air dry clay for my Halloween, but also it kind of reminded me of all your monsters and stuff. But yeah, like that was the kind of thing that I used to do.
Let me see.
Jasper, bring it up a little bit too. This camera right here.
Where are you? I don't know.
This one right there. You're
okay. It was like a foam wig head and just building up the air dry clay and.
So is that what's under there now? It's like a styrofoam head, or what?
No,
how'd you do this one?
We won't go too far into it. What I figured out is that if you take the styrofoam head out,
right,
then the clay doesn't crack as much as it's drying because it
Right.
shrinks.
Sure.
The weird stuff that you come up with when you're doing things the wrong way,
Right.
which was really, I think, another important thing is like knowing that you can try stuff and
Right.
get it wrong.
Right.
And like that's how you know not only how to do it right, but why you do it that way. Like I remember the first time I did a plaster mold, I read, and you put burlap in between the layers.
Right.
So I put on a layer of plaster and I let it dry, and then I put down a dry piece of burlap, and then I put down the next layer of plaster, and you end up with this like
The
flaky
off,
croissant thing
exactly.
that just.
No, it's not quite
It's
right.
like,
I think I did something wrong. No, and it's trying to figure out those steps in between, because whenever you would read these things in books, they're not quite telling you every single thing, because it's somebody like, you and I are professionals, and we're telling somebody, here's how you do this, and
Right.
make sure you do a burlap in between the.
Like you don't think about the things that somebody doesn't know.
Right, and then so the writer is just taking this down, and there's so many books like that you looked at, like the Fangorias or whatever like that, and it's like, I don't think this is right, because this is not working out at all. Or,
Yeah.
Something like that. But yeah, and we've talked about this over the last 2 days now, is some of the mistakes becoming the things that you use later on. I remember, like, from Dusk Till Dawn at K&B, Howard wanted me to build, after the zombies blow up or something like that, and they melt down or whatever, and they just needed gooey spots on the floor.
Yeah.
And I remember pouring up some polyfoam one time at another shop, and I poured too much.
Right.
It was a body cast. It's upside down. The arms are kind of facing this direction, but the wrist is open because there's no hand there. So I'm pouring into a mold. Way too much foam, because I only had like this much, and I mixed up like a gallon bucket of it.
Oh, God.
Poured it in, and then it starts flopping onto the ground. Well, all these little spatters and spots of expanding polyfoam, they expanded,
Yep.
and they're drying and kicking while the other stuff is slapping on top of it. And it was just a big gooey mess. I peeled off the parking lot and I threw away. Well, then when Howard says, I need this gooey, sloppy thing, it's like, wait a minute.
Yep.
If I put plastic on the floor and I put tint into the polyfoam, and maybe I stand on a ladder, so I'm 10 feet up or something, and I start pouring, and it's like slap, splish, splish,
And you
like
get
that.
the splat.
And then no more. And I poured some on the other side on some other plastic, and then I mix up another batch with a slightly different color, and I do that, and it's boop, 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 and then I do some latex nurnies in between and do a little bit more polyfoam. It's like, yeah, look at that. I got a makeup effects gag. I got a some sort of thing, but it was based off of a mistake previously. So that mistake becomes the gag.
But see, you're also really good at those little, like, small techniques that you can kind of build up on. Like,
and it's all from mistakes.
But like I remember,
that just means I made a lot of mistakes.
Maybe. But I remember when I was doing the AM/PM Toongus junk food monster.
Right.
That that you had told me about doing the spray glue.
Oh yeah.
And then you hit it with the heat gun and it creates the bubbly texture.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I could use that to make potato chips.
Okay. Yeah.
And and it's all those kind of weird little
and
things.
that usually happens too, like when you've got a heat gun and you're trying to dry something, and something's just off, like it's like, well, that looks neat, and you start going some more, and it's like, I'm going to take some plastic, and you forget about the project you're supposed to be working on, and all of a sudden you're gluing plastic down and stretching it across the table and heat gunning it. And stuff
somebody
like
walks by and goes, what are you doing?
What are you doing? And it's like, what are you doing? That looks really cool. It's like, you're supposed to be working on that though. I know, but isn't this cool? But that's what we do. I mean, we're creative people that, it's like listening to Steve Johnson talk about Bill Bryan coming up with plastic bag technique and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, it's plastic bags. I wanted to bring up with Steve another, old story too, but it's just like, it's hard, and I'd heard Steve mention this in the past, where it's like using plastic bags, using stuff that's essentially garbage that we would throw away, and we're using these for expensive things, and I would try to talk Steve into certain things, and he goes, I really like it, but I don't know, I'm charging these people a lot of money, so I don't know if I can get away with doing something this cheap, but, and that's part of it too. It's like, if you're charging it, it's like they want a sculpture, they want a mold, they want, sometimes that's just what they want.
Well, and I think sometimes that is why we do things a certain way. Is
Right.
It's like, well, you're paying for
because the
big
producer,
project,
yeah.
so we'll do the whole works on it.
How many times I've listened to Howard Berger and all these other guys too, when I was in the shops, and the one guy, the original guy that I met that did these beautiful eyes and teeth, Rob Hinderstein, and just beautifully painted eyes and all this stuff. And it's like, they're not necessarily for on camera. I mean, these days, yes, because high definition and this and that, but it's like, they're not necessarily for on camera. It's for on set. When you have a producer and a director like looking at these things, it's like, wow, that looks real. And it's like, yeah, you'd never read that.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of the eyes on my characters here, these are, they're photographs behind that are just set behind.
Right.
They're not like, painstakingly everything. It's a printout. It's a flat printout behind plastic.
Which I'm amazed at how well that works, especially on camera.
Yeah.
And like,
you can get the depth in it and all that kind of stuff. There's so many tricks just to fool people, and sometimes you got to fool a producer. So, but so what? When was this head from that you did?
This
the white-haired one.
That was actually a recent one that I had done.
Okay.
I was doing. So because I still do some Halloween stuff,
right.
Not for myself anymore, but
right.
I do some like Halloween props and products for other people to use.
Yeah.
Thanks. And so that was from I was like, well, this is a way that I used to make stuff, so I made a little video just to show people how.
Sure.
I used to do stuff cheap.
Right.
But that Halloween stuff started because when I was in college, I went to film school. Thinking that I didn't realize that this is what I would do as a job. I thought this was like the fun thing that I do on the side.
Right.
And I was like, I'm going to do real film stuff.
Yeah.
I kind of I get to film school and I kind of look around and I'm like, oh, everybody else is better at this than I am. But I'm the only one who can make stuff.
Right.
Like somebody's trying to come up with a blood gag or something, and it's like, oh, I know how to do that.
Right.
And so I kind of became the guy who did the makeup effects in film school. And then through that I kind of realized, well, maybe this is what I do.
Right.
But what I was saying is that in college I couldn't do the Halloween display anymore.
Right.
But I was still coming up with ideas of things that would look cool.
Yeah. You've always got to put that in your file. It's like, I really want to do this, but I can't, so I'm going to file this over here.
But the one that I came up with was this, it was like, what if you had a tombstone? But it was blank, and then you could just project on it, and you could make it, like spiders run across it, and now this probably sounds like a commonplace thing, but at the time it was like a new thing, and nobody had ever really thought of that before. And I was like, I think this is really cool, and so I just did it and put it up where anybody could download it for $20 or something.
Right.
And
so they can project it themselves.
Right.
If they've got a projector, you can download that.
You use your projector, download the video, cut out a piece of styrofoam in the shape of the tombstone, and then it changes, cracks come across it and stuff.
And how were you animating that? How were you?
Practical.
Okay, so you're doing hand animation.
I did. Well, not really. I made a tombstone.
Okay.
I photographed it.
Okay.
And then I aged it down a little bit. I photographed it again, and I cut some cracks into it, and took another picture. And then, I dripped some red paint on a background and comped that in as blood drips, and because this is the world that I understand.
Right.
I can touch
It's
digital.
almost like stop motion animation.
You kind of,
Sort of, and then projected,
And I did go through a stop motion phase.
Yeah.
As a kid, and quickly.
Everybody does, don't we all?
Quickly learned that I don't have the patience.
That's the amazing thing. I did a stop motion film when I was a kid, because I got my Super 8 camera and I had my Star Wars stuff go across my. I had a AT-AT walker.
Yep.
And land speeder and all that stuff, and that sat in my bedroom for 2 weeks or more, because I had my camera in one spot.
Yeah.
And everything just moved in increments all day long. But then it would be like, I've got to do my homework, I got to go to school, I got to make my bed, I've got to do these things, and then I had to share my room with my brother. He'd be like, why don't we move this stuff? It's like, no, step over, you can't move anything like that, because I had my camera and it was all locked off.
How far did you get?
What's that?
How far did you get?
About that far. It was honestly, literally. I think the walker moved about
pretty good.
This far, and then the land speeder went, zipped through the legs and did all that stuff. But
I think that's more than I ever got in a shot. Like I remember I had like a little tiny Lego AT-AT.
Yeah.
And I could get it like this close to camera, walk past it, and.
No, I love it. I did hand animation in high school where I was drawing the pictures and doing and that was really fun. I really love doing hand animation.
I tried in like 8th grade. There was a thing where you could like come up with your own little class in the afternoon, and I got a animation book, and I was going through it, doing the little exercises.
Right.
And I figured out that like there was I read about that they had in like the 70s at Disney they started Xeroxing to get the artwork onto the cells, and I was like, well, it's kind of like transparencies for the overhead projector, and there's already 3 little holes. You can do a 3-hole punch.
Right.
And I did like a short little sequence like that, which was not super successful.
Well, no, it's that kind of stuff. It's that kind of experimenting that will lend itself to something, whether it worked out or not. I talked about this yesterday with Mike Deek with one of my first jobs at John Beekler's shop, where it's like, I've always got that gag in the back of my head. Mm-hmm. It didn't work out the way I wanted it to, but there's always some material that I will find even like a year ago or 10 years ago or whatever like that. And it's like, that would have worked if only I'd have had that thing.
Right.
But then you keep all that stuff, like I said, in your file, and it pops back up. It didn't work for this, but it might really work well for this.
Right.
Something's going to come up that works for.
And sometimes I think just the exercise of thinking something through and trying it is kind of satisfying in itself. And like, even if it didn't work, it's like, well, I had the idea, I tried it, I got somewhere, and that's kind of cool.
What was something that you did, you're working towards it, and like, it didn't work, but then later on, you were able to substitute. It's like, oh, no, this didn't work here, but it really worked here. Has there been something like that? Or
I don't know.
Even like a gag that you did for a film or a commercial or...
I'll think about it.
You'll think about it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, like when you were at Legacy, I mean, did you do set work? Were you thrown into the mix with that kind of stuff?
Once in a while.
Yeah. Is there that moment? Like, I mean, you came to... Where did you come from again? You're from LA?
Oh, I'm from Northern California.
You're from Northern California. Yeah. So you came down here to work in the film industry.
Yeah.
Was there that moment? Have you had that moment? It's like, holy crap, I'm here. I made it. Is something just socked you in the arm, or, it's like that pinch me moment. Like, oh, I'm really doing this.
Not really.
Me not working at... Alan Scott might be watching right now.
Oh, sorry, Al.
He's going to hear you say not really. You're working underneath the T-Rex from Jurassic
Park. Picking up fallen fake Cheetos off of Chungis's beard.
Hey,
But there is like something fun about that.
Job's a job.
Well, and just like you come home at the end of the day and you've got a pocket full of fake Cheetos that fell off, and you're like, well, that's actually kind of cool.
That's kind of fun.
No, who else had that happen today?
Exactly. And I said this yesterday, like my dad always said, it beats digging ditches.
Boy, it sure does.
And when it's like the 11th hour at the shop, meaning it's 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., and you're miserable, you're hot, you want to go home, you haven't slept, like that, but there's that moment where you can stop and look around and going, holy crap, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And other people are in bed, but they have to go up, they get up for a factory job, they get up for an office job.
Yeah.
And we still get to do, the fantastic stuff you're doing.
And that is one of the cool ones is driving to set really early in the morning.
Yeah.
When it's like nobody else is out.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of like, oh, this is Los Angeles. This is...
I remember I was driving into town when I moved here from Wisconsin. I'm driving into town. I got my Fangorias in the back seat and my boxes, my special effects books. I got a couple of masks with me. And I'm driving in, and I'm on the 101 freeway, heading out to the place I was renting a room. Had that all pre-set up. And I'm driving, and I'm like... little intimidated, but I'm like, whatever. I'm going. I'm trying to check. I've got my Thomas guide, and Thomas guide. It's a book. It has a map in it. Now we call it Google Maps, where it was on your phone, and they'll talk to you. But no, it's like flipping pages. Okay, I got to go up to 101, and there's like a Sepulveda Boulevard and Tujunga, and it's like, okay, someday I'll learn those names, and then it's like, oh yeah, that's not what they're called. But so when I'm driving in, and I knew it's like, man, I'm in Hollywood. I pulled up on the freeway with a truck, like a flatbed truck, carrying the DeLorean from Back to the Future. And I'm like, I'm in Hollywood. Holy
funny?
crap, this is cool.
I remember when, maybe it was the first time I was down in this area with my parents and my brother, and we were driving, and this truck pulls up, and there's a blue car on the back of it, and it turns into the Warner Brothers lot.
Uh-huh.
And my dad, the car guy, goes, "Oh, that's the car from Harry Potter."
Oh. The
And
flying.
it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, huh. Yeah,
That's cool.
they really do have the little magic sprinkled around.
No, it is. I mean, just everywhere you go in Los Angeles, and there's always that, you can go right into the middle of the valley and go see where, the Back to the Future house is, or this house, or like Mark Tavares was talking about earlier, is like the Halloween house is right next to a gallery in Pasadena, it's everywhere. It's all over the place. And us being able to be in some of these places. I mean, I got to shoot on, what was it, Stage 28?
28.
Stage 20, which is no longer there at Universal Studios, and it was the Phantom of the Opera set.
I wish I got to see that one.
And I mean, I was there as a 17-year-old kid on the tour, and then I got to work there. And that's the
cool.
stage where we set up, and I had our tables there. And it's really kind of like you're there for a week or 2 weeks, and you got your table, and you got your set chair, and all that stuff. And you're just, it's like waiting for the next shot to happen.
Yeah.
And you start looking around and going, I'm on the Phantom of the Opera set.
Yeah.
This just doesn't get any better than this. It's like, and then the people are riding on the tram past you.
Yeah.
And whipping their cameras up. You're like, I'm nobody, dude. I just...
It was kind of early when I had moved down here. I had a friend who was a prop guy, and he was working on this Hallmark Channel TV show that was shooting at Universal.
Okay.
And one day, I got to come in at night and help him set up they were doing a Halloween special. And the funny thing is that this, like, just sort of American house that they were shooting at is at the end of the Western Street.
Right.
And I got to drive on and park on the Western Street.
Right.
And it's at night, and like there's nothing else happening, and I'm like, how bizarre and cool is this? That's
all of a sudden you're driving on Universal, and I did the same when we did War of the Worlds at Stan's, and we had all these redweed tests that we had done, and it's just all these little boxes basically, like we can do it like this, we can do it like that. There's these textures, this color, all of that kind of stuff, and we had all these little sets. I went there with Lindsay McGowan, and. So same thing, drive onto Universal, set up these things, walk through this room with Steven Spielberg. Which one do you like? Do you like this one? Well, how'd you do that one? And like a blah, blah, blah. And you're just doing your job.
Yeah.
And it's that moment you're packing all this stuff up, and I got to get back in the truck, and I'm putting it in the truck, and I sit there in the car for a second. It's like, this is where I drove by when I was 17 years old. And I knew Amblin was right over there.
That's
and it's
cool.
like, it's like, I wonder if I could see Steven Spielberg from the tram or something like that. And I just got out of a meeting with him.
Yeah.
And it's one of those moments where you got pinched really hard and you just go, holy crap, you just did that.
Yeah.
You just did that. Then you're like 20 years later. It's like, yeah, there you go. How's that? So let's see your other stuff. You brought some. You've been doing some really great Halloween stuff.
I did. Yeah. This is.
You need help?
No.
I don't want you to bust anything.
Well. So this is one of the.
We gotta lift it up.
I'll lift in 1 sec.
Should we put them on the table?
Maybe the table.
Let's do it. Why don't you
Oh, you want that one?
Yeah, let's swing that out, and we're going to bring the show and tell table in. Magic finger, magic finger.
Yeah, so I've been doing some
good,
different.
It's right at the bottom, so
Okay.
we can see it.
I'll pick it up once we.
Okay.
Here.
Okay, cool.
So this is one of the Halloween props that I've been doing. So this one is a kit that I send people all the pieces, and they can build their own animatronic little raven guy, which is like people have really been enjoying it. Like, and it's
so
super
it's a kit.
interesting.
They have to put it together.
Yeah, it's just I give you like some cut acrylic pieces and a bunch of hardware and feathers and fur.
Oh, okay. So you have to fur it. You have to feather it. It's a whole kit.
It's all like
but it's all
raw
already there.
materials.
So when you put it together, does it come with the adapters and all that kind of stuff, or not?
You gotta add the power. The reason is because there's people who do their own animatronic stuff for Halloween already, and they have systems that they like to use.
Right.
But so
you do everything up to this point,
basically.
Okay.
But yeah, I kind of. It was something that I wanted to do. Somebody asked me to make one for them, and I did like a one-off. And then people kept asking me, "Can I have one? Can I have one?"
Right.
And I said, "Well, let me just do it where you can make your own." And so it was kind of like. What's interesting is that I don't do animatronics professionally.
Right.
You know, we have
I think you do.
people who are really good at that.
I think he does it
No, but
professionally.
like, you've got Rick Allenson coming in.
Well, yeah.
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like I watch guys like him at work doing it.
But that's what we do. We watch everybody we're working with and we learn stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, and then back to like what I learned making talking skulls in high school.
Right.
And so,
this is so cool. Now, when you send this out as a kit, they have to? You don't provide the book.
I do not provide the book.
So, how is he mounted to this?
He's actually just on the lid.
Okay, cool. So he's just mounted into the lid.
Yeah, it's all inside him.
That's so cool.
It's fun, and it's super cool just seeing what people come up with it, because it is.
Everybody can put their own take on it.
Mm-hmm. And some people do like light up eyes, and I got somebody who's trying to turn one into a toucan right now.
Okay.
And it's just like, I really like that.
What kind of book is that standing on? Or is it a drink? The toucan.
Oh,
is it like a good tiki?
I think it's for his tiki bar.
That's funny.
So, but yeah,
wait, who is it?
We have somebody watching who got one.
Really?
Yeah. It's a nice kit. Got mine.
Thank you.
Cool. There you go. I'm gonna have to get one.
It's super. I like the aspect of it that's sort of like helping people.
Right.
Create stuff, and
you're still selling the kits.
Yep. Yeah.
Where can they find the kit?
My website is chickenprops.com, and the reason is because it's Mr. Chicken's prop shop. I am Mr. Chicken.
That's who you are behind that mask. You are Mr. Chicken.
Which was sort of my identity on the Halloween sites for a long time, and then. Now
that
this
is so much fun.
But yeah, it's just sort of like part of it is just the fun of coming up with things, and part of it is that
and that's just running on a cycle, right?
It's just doing it's
just like a gear, like a automaton type.
It's 5 servos.
Oh, really? Okay.
And they're real simple, just little pushing levers.
Right.
You can see on the website, you'll see a video of it moving without the feathers and stuff on. Mm-hmm. And it's just the body shell is just 2 parts that split, so you can get into it easy, which is something that I learned from having to fix stuff.
Yeah.
But the other aspect of it is just like we don't work all the time in special effects. And so then this was the stuff that I would do when I would get laid off, when work would get slow at a shop.
Right.
Is I would just say, okay, what's the next thing that I'm going to come up with?
Right. But now you've been doing a lot of other fun Halloween stuff lately, because I follow you on Instagram, and you got some kick-ass masks.
I have been doing some masks. I got. I brought one.
We'll slide this guy over there.
This is my pirate guy, which I just think is fun. I actually did this because I was sculpting a mask. For Mask Company Trick or Treat Studios, and I like having 2 projects at the same time.
Only 2?
Active, but actually no. Okay, I do have an entire shelf that is all things that I started.
Right.
Put a day in on, and then got distracted and started something else. But I was doing a mask where I thought I was going to have to sculpt a lot of hair. And then I sort of did this one as a prototype, not like a test, but just sort of like to kind of get it out of my system.
Right.
Palette cleanser.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. The palette cleanser. Okay, I like that term, and I use it a lot on the little dumb stuff. Like I started getting into like model kits, the old Aurora monster model kits and stuff.
That's great.
And I love that kind of like simple stuff where you can just sit down and do it for like a couple days and be done. Does it smell like fresh latex?
I love the smell of fresh latex. I really, that smells like a mask shop. That takes me back to childhood. Oh, so cool.
Yeah, and then.
But now you've been doing like the Scooby-Doo masks.
I got to do a couple of those for Trick or Treat Studios. And the funny thing there is that I think it was actually through like the goofy stuff like this,
right?
That that I sort of got Justin Mabry's attention, who works there.
Okay.
And I don't think he knew that I worked in special effects and could do masks and stuff at the time, but it was sort of through doing just like the stuff that makes me happy, that like that I think, even though like this had no purpose professionally,
right?
But I think like people who get it,
right?
Like this stuff,
yeah.
Like, you know.
No, it's got your style.
Like it's stylized and it's not realistic.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to believe that on Grey's Anatomy.
Right.
But I think certain people kind of connect to it.
And I go for the little bit more stylized and whimsy. So
yeah.
As do you. So that's what I really like.
Yeah, and
I love the whimsical quality. I mean, there's obviously you've got like a affinity for Disney and that feel and that texture of the. You know, it's like this is something that would have 50 years ago, 60 years ago.
Yeah. You
would see, and that's what I like. I like that quality, just that the whimsy to it, but it's a different era.
Yeah.
You know, and I like that coming through.
Like one minute.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
so
okay.
we got to wrap up, but we're gonna get cut off by Instagram. Anyhow, Jasper, thank you so much for coming.
Hey, thank you.
And sharing this. What's your Instagram handle?
My Instagram is Jasper J Anderson FX, because somebody else had Jasper J Anderson.
There you go.
And
we'll be sharing all that kind of info too, so that's where they can look at some of this stuff, and there's links to be able to find this kind of stuff and just see what you're doing.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Welcome to the booth.
Thank you.
Hope you had fun.
I'll go back to my booth now.
Back here, yeah, right down the aisle.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to be back in just a little bit. Take a little break. Thanks, everybody.